and welcome to another edition of the Music Warehouse podcast. We are delighted and honored to have with us a living legend here, Mr. Frank Zaitshik, the owner of Wade Shows. And Guy, I don't think we're going to have an hour today, but we probably have to do 7 or 8 of these to get even a quarter of the stories out of this guy. So I'm real excited to hear what he's got to say today. Welcome, Frank.
Hey, thanks, Ron. Good morning to you. I was I was thinking about as you were introduced and me how incredibly flattered I am to whether it's a joke or not to say I'm one of the guys that is worthy of talking about. Let's put it that way. So that's incredibly humbling. You also alluded to that I have many stories. I gave a little talk a little while ago to a group of people, and instead of a man of few words, I said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a man of many words." But I'll try to limit it this week.
But they're entertaining words usually, so that's a good thing.
I hope so. As I get older, I find myself reminiscing more and more, and I wonder if I'm getting to that stage where I so patiently waited on some of my elders and heard that story for the third time, and I just hope that I stay relevant. And as long as I'm working, I want to do it the best that I can do it.
I'm around you fairly often, and I haven't heard repeat stories very often.
Okay,
you're ready to go. So, I guess we start. How'd you get into business? I mean, I know your parents were in the business, so can you tell us a little bit about that and your start and going to college and all that thing?
Yeah, absolutely. My dad was a Damon Runyon kind of character. He was out of the house and had a single parent. His mother passed away early on, and he kind of ran the streets of New York, and he knew different people. He was kind of a semi-wise guy in the sense that he liked to gamble and he liked to play pool and all those kinds of things. And he had a cousin that worked in the carnival business, and he always seemed to have money. And so finally, my dad went to one of the dates that they were playing, and it happened to be Hartford, Connecticut, the week after the Hartford fire in a circus. So absolutely nobody came out. So it looked like my dad was going to be one and done. But a little later on, he went back out and he made that his life's work. And what a pair my mom and dad were. My mom was as hard a worker as you can imagine any time. And my dad was very resourceful and very, always had goals. And his goal was to take care of his family. And after trying and trying, he did that. Myself, I was a very good athlete and primarily football. And my goal always was to go to a Division I school, play 4 years at that school, and then become a football coach. Well, I did go to a Division I school, the University of Miami, but those guys got kind of bigger and faster, and I didn't. And so it was about midway through that first season, I realized that those guys had more athleticism than I did. They were as tough as I were. They were bigger than I was. And so my first goal was not accepting the fact that my football career was over, but rather that I would transfer to a Division II school. But back then, you had to sit out a year to transfer from one college to the next. And during that year's time, I got confused and lost for a bit, and I didn't do that. And I really suffered with that for several years. I became a weightlifter and a boxer and anything to prove my masculinity. And after a few years, I understood that everybody wasn't football players, and I moved on. And I told my mom and dad I wanted to be in the carnival business just for a little short time to get some money together and start my own business. And of course, that turned into a lifetime. My dad and I were partners for a few years, and he said to me, "Hey, Frank, I love you as a son. I don't much care for you as a partner. I'm saying," Dad was kind of stay small, keep it all. And I was Mr. Everything. I wanted to put up 27 joints, and it didn't matter if 15 of them didn't make money. The rest of them did, and I overcame it. So my dad went to the Thomas show as concession manager, and I stayed on the Link shows. And heck, the very first spot that we were at, something happened with Stretch Rice, who was the concession manager at that time, where he left, and by osmosis, I became the concession manager. I think I was 24 or 25 years old, and I held that job for 10 years. But unlike a lot of kids, that have sports heroes, and I was definitely a sports guy, I had carnival heroes too. I looked up to the Royal American Show or the Amusements of America show. I know you had Phil on the other day. What a legend he is. So all those shows were my idols too, and the guys that ran those shows. So I had sports heroes and I had carnival heroes, and then when I bought my show with Jerry Vinson in 1980, I wanted to be those guys. And so it was always my goal to be bigger, better, faster, and taller. And, to some degree, we accomplished that. We had 33 rides in the state of Michigan exclusively. Today, arguably, we have about 125 rides, and we operate in 14 different states. How we got there, heck, if I know, I know we just put one foot in front of the other. We had an incredible group of carnival guys, and I did get my wish, Ron. I wanted to be a coach, and probably 10, 15 years ago, it dawned on me, I get my uh, the difference in a great football coach and a good football coach is good football coaches win national championships with great players. Great coaches win national championships with the team he has. And not to say that I didn't have a great team, because I did, but I had the ability through luck or blind, whatever it was, I was able to fit all the pieces together and get the most out of the team that I have. And I'm real proud. And I'm real proud of the team I have. And, I think we try to empower people to buy into what we want to do. And we don't give up. We just keep putting our foot ahead of ourselves. And just because we open at a date doesn't mean our work is done, because every day you can improve your presentation. And that's what we do. Some people don't know me and might think I do it all for money and that I'm a greedy guy. Why am I still working at 78? And to tell you the truth, because I don't know what else to do, but, it's our goal it was pretty hard to get whatever degree of success you might give us, but it's equally as hard to stay there, because the team that got you there, they get a little older. You have to guard against complacency. You got to guard against the path of least resistance, and you just gotta keep moving. And one of my worst fears is we have a level of a success, and I don't want anybody at the later stages of my career to take it away from us. So we try to stay competitive all the time, Ron.
Yeah, there's no draft obviously in the carnival business, but so that factors in like old time baseball. But you've kept the same people around you a long time. Talking about being a coach, I mean, you have people that have been with you not only their lives but their kids' lives. Some of them, which is is sort of a testament of your coaching ability. I know you like to make that analogy, so that's really interesting.
I lost you for a minute, but the good news, I got you back.
I said, there's no draft in the carnival business, like not draft, but trading like there is today in sports. But you've kept the same people, not only in their lifetimes, but a lot of people, two and maybe even three generations, have stayed with your team, which is a testament to your coaching ability. I know you like to use that analogy, and I think it's a good one in a lot of ways. But that's pretty incredible that you've been able to do that.
I don't know what happened to us, Ron.
I think we lost you. Did you hear what I said?
No.
I said, there's no trading in the carnival business like in sports, to use the analogy, but you've had the same people around you for not all of them, obviously, but a lot of them, major staff people, not only for their lifetimes, but for their kids sometimes, and maybe even it's gone two and three generations. So that is a testament to your coaching abilities. I know you like to make that analogy, but that's something to be really proud of.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. A great case in point is the Danton family. I was when I bought the weight shows. Art Danton was the electrician, and he was kind of a legend. He was really well thought of. He grew up around the Happy Land show, and as Happy Land began their demise, he moved over to the weight show. So I kind of inherited Art. What a man's man he was, and it wasn't long into our career that he passed away kind of early, but his son Jimmy took over, and he really taught Jimmy a lot of wonderful things. And Jimmy was between the things that Art taught Jimmy and the things that I pushed Jimmy to do. He became one of our top managers, and he manages the East Coast. And I guess next to me, he's as senior as you come in management. But the good news is Jimmy's son, Alex Danton, along with my son, Gary, they manage our Michigan unit and do a heck of a good job of it. And I think our future is bright with young guys like Alex and my son. And over here, I'm sitting in there. If you ask about the washer and dryer behind me, we moved yesterday, and my office isn't set up yet. And so I came into Todd Robertson's office, which you can see in the background. It's got a little bit of got a dryer and washer and a blank wall back there. But anyway, Todd's another one of our good young guys. And so our challenge now is to be loyal and respectful of all those guys that brought us to the dance. But we really need to be looking at who else we can transition to make sure that the weight shows is generational.
Yeah.
So
you talked about your going to college and stuff and kind of glossed over it a bit, but how important was education to your parents for you? Was, a lot of people work in this business and some make it a priority and others don't, but it seems like going to the University of Miami, it didn't happen by accident. So
yeah. I think for a lot of people, college is overrated. For me, my main wanting to go to college was to play football. But once that didn't happen and I was stuck in college, I did go to college for 4.5 years, and I took those kind of subjective courses like marketing management, and things like that. And certainly my time in college gave me an opportunity to mature and kind of trot in place, if you will, not really going anywhere, but kind of keeping my feet moving and seeing what options were going to be available. And quite honestly, I've never been a guy to look back, because part of my past is unpleasant. The part of transitioning out of football, that was a big deal for me, Ron, and it plays a big role in our success today, because athletics, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, or whatever your sport is, teaches you to be competitive, to never quit, to overcome adversity, and to work with a team. And kind of that's kind of what we have to do to be successful. But I always wanted to win, but I didn't necessarily want to win for the money. I wanted to win for validation of something, and what that something was, I don't know. But in doing that, I was either always running to catch somebody, or always running so somebody wouldn't catch me. I come to a story, and I guess this is not really a bad story, because I'm going to name names and whatnot. I remember the park show was at the Miami Beach Convention Center. And at that time, I was trying to flirt with and trying to get the Broward County Fair that Straits had. And I thought I was making headway. And Jerry Murphy came to me at the park show, and he goes, "Hey, Frank," he says, "you got Mr. Straits pretty upset." And I said, "Well, heck, why is that?" And he said, "Well, you're messing around with Broward. That's his spot. I could make a deal with you and Straits that you become allies and not competitors." And I said, "Well, that's great for Mr. Straits. He's like, I got it all, and I'm a guy that wants it all." So, I don't get upset at young people coming along and trying to get their toothpick in my lumber yard, because that's what I did. As long as they do it in a professional, ethical manner, that's just business. I want to do two things. I want to deliver a great product, and I want to do it in a fair and equitable manner. That I don't want to be a guy that when they put on my epitaph, yeah, he booked a lot of spots, but he gave all the money away. I don't think that I've done that. I think I think at times I probably have given a little more money than I should have, and other times I made great deals. But you do what the industry dictates you do. I've seen a movement lately where carnival owners and endorsed by the OABA is trying to put together a package that says, "Hey, we're all giving away way too much money. We need to quit doing that. Fairs need to be a little more equitable towards us than they have now." Well, that's all good, but it's hard to ask a fair to, hey, take that money out of your pocket and put it into my money, because we are the people that created the situation we're in. And we didn't create it overnight, and we're not going to solve it overnight. But it does need to be solved. And as some of our dates have come due, we've been able to renegotiate in a fair way. We didn't always get what we want, but if we couldn't get a reduction in prices, at least fairs were willing to entertain fewer hours, less rides, or do some things that would improve our bottom line by reducing our expenses. That's what it's all about. I wish we could all live and let live. I'm sitting in a pretty good place to say that, and there's probably some people,
Right.
if they even interested in looking at that, say, well, Baloney, he's they would say the same thing that Frank Zaitshik said to Jerry Murphy when he said, "Go easy on straights and you guys can be buddies."
No, I think you're 100% right. That's a cycle of the business. I remember not 20 years ago or so, there was a carnival that was up and coming, and then you had straight shows or somebody else, and the carnivals that have everything want to make a deal to have peace amongst everybody, and it just makes things. But when you came in 1980 and got to a position where you were moving, you had a big road to conquer, because you've got a local Michigan show that expanded, but to break that ceiling and get your first state fair, first major event, most shows never get there. But not only did you get there, you kept going, and moving things. And I think a little bit of it started with Tampa, with the Independent Midway. You certainly made a name for yourself there. So have you reflected on that much?
Yeah, I have, and in fact, as I said, I just gave a talk a couple of weeks ago, and it was a lot about the history at the Florida State Fair. And in 1991, in the fall of the year, I was playing the Florida State Fairgrounds, playing the Brandon Bloom Festival, in a little different area than the State Fair goes up in. And of course, when I was there, I wanted to look my best and grab attention. And Fred Brown and Paul Robinson and Frank Ross came to see me during that, and they said, "Hey, this is not public information yet, but the Florida State Fair is going to be independent, and if you would like, you can be a part of that. Submit us a list." And so I was all excited about that, and I submitted a list. And because I didn't have any dates before that, I could come in there early, get all my stuff ready. And that first year, a guy named Gary Spence was the Midway coordinator from Phoenix, and so he was trying to bring a lot of West Coast guys to Florida for this date, and kind of rebrand it like the Arizona State Fair. But at the last minute, he had 3 or 4 or 5 different cancellations, and every time he had a cancellation, I was already right there, and I had equipment, and so I'd say, "Put me in, coach, I don't smoke." So that first year, I wound up with about 30 rides there, and became one of 3 anchors. And Ron, it was so exciting for me that when we brought a load in, everybody had to be uniformed up. The ride had to be washed and ready to go, and the driver had to be uniformed up. And I got to say, this may sound like bragging, but I think I accomplished our goal. Everything that we brought there was fresh. We did get a lot of attention. The other anchors were feral shows, and believe it or not, Uncle Ed Gregory's United shows.
Yeah, and I don't mean to interrupt, but you're not even giving the full context, because it was one of my first couple of years in this business, but there was enormous pressure from all the carnivals to boycott the Florida State Fair. I mean, it was. I would think, I was new to the business, but everybody said, we're not supporting the Florida State Fair. Those who do, we're not going to work with them. We're going to ostracize them. We're going to do, whatever. And, so it was a decision you had to make, which you made. So that's.
Yeah, it was. And going back to that, Ron, And this is just from my point of view, and it doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily have to be the right one. But one of the leaders in that was straight shows. Cumberland Valley bought into it. Conklin bought into it. There was a whole group of people, and they sent out a letter to everybody about it. But me, I'm going like, hey, I'm trying to get my start. This is my first big opportunity, and I'm going to make the most of it, whether it's an independent midway or not. And that did work for me. It gave me some national notoriety. I didn't actually get any dates right away from that, but I got a lot of attention. I know that I talked to Jim Sinclair and the guy you interviewed, Rick Furnett. He had just moved to the Ohio State Fair, and he had encouraged me to put a proposal in there. But what he didn't tell me is the deadline had passed, so I did a lot of work for nothing. And it always kind of bothered me with him that I don't think he was 100% forthright with me with that, or maybe he was, and he was learning too, because it was his.
He said during the interview that he wasn't even involved in the process until the very end. He just said in the last meeting was his whole involvement, so maybe he didn't know, when they were due or whatever.
So we didn't get the Ohio State Fair, but what we did do is that next year I made a deal with Rod Link,
right,
and we called it a joint venture, but the reality is he was phasing out and I was phasing in, and I bought Oklahoma City and Montgomery from him. And what I didn't know is he was terminally ill with cancer, and he never disclosed that to me. But I started to see signs. He was supposed to meet me, and he would have to delay that. He was going to meet me and help me lay out the Oklahoma State Fair, and he couldn't do that, and he told me to go ahead. And then when he came to the Oklahoma State Fair, he was only able to go out and about for about 3 days, and then he went into the hospital, and he was in the hospital for the whole fair. And Mr. Rideoffer, Rick and Patty's son, came to the Oklahoma State Fair along with Wilson Sparks.
Yeah,
Wilson Sparks, and they were trying to get it, and they had got a little encouragement because Rod didn't do a very good job the year before, and Don Holtz did send his staff out to look at other carnivals, and one of them was Rideoffer. And once again, I don't know that this is actually the case, but what I always thought was the case, I never could figure out why they played the Ozark Empire Fair in Springfield, but I heard, and this may not be true, and I'm sure that Rick or Patty could probably, say that it's not true if it wasn't, but that's why they signed Springfield, is because they thought they were going to end up with Oklahoma City too. But I was fortunate enough, I was able to re-sign Oklahoma City. We were like 600,000 up in ride gross. And then we went to Montgomery, and then Rod got out of the hospital. He came to Montgomery, but he went back in the hospital and he never came out. And I was able to re-sign a 5-year contract in Montgomery, and then we were kind of off to the races. A guy named Frank Ross at the Florida State Fair, and I know I've told you this story before, but what the Florida State Fair meant to me in those early days was I was like the Native American standing on the corner of a tourist town, and every time a tourist would go by, he'd say, chance. And then finally another tourist came up to him and he said, hey, Mr. Native American Indian, you don't mean chance, you mean how? And he said, hell no, I know how, I need a chance. And that's kind of where I was at in those early days. I know you made a sarcastic remark to me so 92 was the Florida State Fair, 93 was Oklahoma and Montgomery, and then 96 we got the Meadowlands, and at that time you were with them, and in that I said whatever humbling statement I said, which this is our first really big opportunity, the first date we've signed it. And I don't know if you remember this or not, but you said something like, why would he say something like that? But I was just being honest and truthful. It was a big deal to me. Unfortunately, we only played the Meadowlands that one time, and I could get into that, but it would serve no good except...
Was that the World Cup year?
Huh?
Was that the World Cup year?
No, it wasn't, but we had a lot of rain, and we only grossed like 1.2 or 1.3 million. I say only, but it was usually a 1.6. So it put a lot of pressure on Marty, and in turn it put financial pressure on me. And so at the end of the day, I wasn't comfortable going back under the financial arrangements. And then Straits went in there, and I don't know why he did, but it seemed to me like I just signed the Central Florida Fair in Orlando, and it was I thought it was kind of retaliatory of me getting Orlando, him getting the Meadowlands. What he didn't know is he didn't take it away from me. I didn't want it because of the tremendous amount of money that we needed. The greatest thing about Marty and my relationship there was he had this saying is competition's like castor oil. First it makes you sick, then it makes you better. I never forgot that, and it's absolutely the truth.
And of course, he's talking about Marty Guerin, who is the founder and longtime runner of the Meadowlands Fair in New Jersey.
Yeah, and not to disparage him, he did a lot of good things, and he had a good show. He just, my time and his time didn't coincide. There were some things that happened that made that not work. But he taught me a lot of things. He and I were partners in my first sky ride. So I think of most every relationship I've ever had. If I'm not having it now, I can take something good away from that relationship. Unfortunately, there's people in my past that we don't even speak to each other now, and that's a doggone shame. But I guess life just rolls like that, and you got to appreciate the good things from the past, but you got to kind of live in today and look forward to tomorrow.
So from the Meadowlands, then you really started some conquests. What did you start picking up? You were on a roll there for a decade.
In '98, I had something terrible happen. I used to say, the worst things that have ever happened to me I didn't deserve, but I've certainly skated on some things that maybe I should have had my hand slapped for. And one of those things was I had a terrible lawsuit with a fellow named Dennis Silber, who I have disparaging words for, but I won't do that here. And he had a relationship at the Michigan State Fair that gave cause for Glenn Wade and then later on me to have that same relationship. But because of a lot of events, that relationship just went really, really, really sour. And he ended up suing me. And gosh darn, the lawsuit was probably 3 or 4 inches thick. And I knew that he would have a very good, aggressive lawyer. So I kind of reached out into the community, and it didn't help me much that everybody I asked for a recommendation gave me the lawyer that the Fred Silver Company had. So anyway, that lasted about 4.5 years. So I got that going on. And then I had a lawsuit that my insurance company didn't defend me on, and they got a default judgment for like $750,000, and they didn't serve that on me until 3 days, or they weren't going to serve it on me until I got in Rome, Georgia, at the Coosa Valley Fair. The manager found out about that, and he told me. So anyway, after advice from their attorney's mind, we filed a Chapter 11. And we thought that was only going to be there for 2 weeks. Well, it took 1.5 years because Ed Gregory from United Shows got involved, and he bought 15% of that judgment for the sole purpose of seeing if he couldn't crash and burn me. Fortunately, I didn't crash and burn, and that 1998 was a year that we signed the State Fair of Louisiana, the Delaware State Fair, and Fiesta San Antonio. So in my lawsuit against the insurance company, I got no damages because I couldn't prove that it harmed me. I did get back the money that I laid out, which was about $250,000. But so I had a lot of people doubting our financial integrity because of the bankruptcy, and also this Fred Silber lawsuit. They just didn't let that go. They tried to pound me every place I went. In fact, I had to put up a $1 million letter of credit for Fiesta San Antonio, and they gave me, I think, 7 days or 5 business days to do that. And it took me it took me to the day of, within 2 hours, to deliver that letter of credit, or they were going to cancel the contract. And it was a big deal in the newspaper and everything there. And had they done that, it would have been really negative on our reputation and our future growth, because there was some question about our financial stability. And then with the Prince of Darkness lawsuit, they were stirring that up as best they could. But I did sign 3 dates in that period of time. So, we just moved on. We were always forthright with it. Before we filed Chapter 11, we called every fair that we had. We called every one of our creditors, and we made arrangements with them to make them comfortable. And I think we filed that in September of '97, and it was fully adjudicated in June of '98. But what happened in the meantime there is Ed Gregory was able to convince the Commissioner of Agriculture, Bob Crawford, that he should probably have a layer of insulation between me and the fair because of my bankruptcy, and Ed Gregory was able to sign it. Now the deal was I was supposed to be there with the same rides, same locations, and all that thing, but that didn't quite work out like it was. And I had a 3-year period of time that I wasn't at the Florida State Fair, and then of course, I've been back ever since then. So it's one of those things. When I was down and out, I wasn't really down and out. I was just working to get back in.
That's amazing.
And I was proud of that. And the other place that happened with is the Livonia Spree. Livonia Spree was one of my biggest days. If you took away the Michigan State Fair, the Livonia Spree was our best date in Michigan, and we always kind of dressed up and tried to show our best foot forward there and try to book a few other people. But Pew Shows was able to get that from me for 10 years. For
Wow.
10 years, and then we just kept plugging away at it, and we were able to get it back, and we're still there. But anyway, that was those middle to late '90s were really good for us, and I think from like '92 on, I think in the '90s I think we signed 7 dates or 8 dates that were 7 figures or better. And then in 2000, we signed 8 or 9 dates that were 7 figures or better. So, once you got to a certain place, you didn't have to establish your credibility. Your reputation would do that for you. But early on, it was difficult to get anybody to pay attention. I know when we got to Central Florida Fair in Orlando, when I called the manager, a guy named Charlie Price, he said, "Who is this? What carnival do you have?" Didn't know a single thing about us. So they were going to visit Ride-Offer in Perry, and I convinced them to come to Montgomery too. And I got ready with about a 5-page overview of wage shows, and I guess that overview was strong enough that they came and seen us, and they picked us. And then that following year, the Delaware State Fair was looking. I called them, and I got the same thing. Who are you? And they kind of blew me off. And then they called me back a day later. A guy named Dennis Hazard did, and he said, "We'd like to come see you." And I flew him by jet from Delaware to Montgomery for the Alabama National Fair. Give him about a 3-hour tour and flew him back that same day. And they called me the next day, and we were moving. That was the last day. It was a Saturday, and we were moving on Sunday. And they called me and said, "Well, you haven't got a contract to us yet." And I said, "I haven't had a chance." But anyway, we signed that too. And, they've all been really exciting. I think the most notoriety of any date that we ever got was the New York State Fair. And I'm not saying it was the best or it was the biggest feather in our cap or anything like that. I just say that the amount of media attention that we got with that was truly amazing. It was that same year we got the Florida State Fair, and it wasn't 25% of the attention that the New York State Fair got. So that's all been pretty cool. Our Florida route. I'll tell you a good story here. So I'm going in every year early to the Florida State Fair getting set up. Ed Gregory and United Shows has the South Florida Fair in West Palm. So many years you close on a Sunday in West Palm, and you got to open on Thursday in Tampa. And so, as always, I looked a whole lot better than Ed, and the only reason they were keeping Ed there was, one, he was there that first year when everybody was boycotting it, but also he had some political connections that allowed him to stay there, but certainly not from his carnival. But anyway, the state inspectors, the fair managers there, and I'm there, and they're kind of checking Ed up about about me being ready and him not. And he goes, well, Frank's here ahead of time. I have to move from West Palm to Tampa. And I cut him off and I said, hey, I'll trade places with you, Ed. Of course, he didn't want to do that, but this next year, that's the situation I'm in. We'll close on Sunday in West Palm, and we'll open on Thursday in Tampa. That's a feat, but we'll get that done. We'll do a lot of planning. We'll do a lot of pre-placement, and I think we'll do that. So
that's quite the move to get from one to the other so quickly. There, it's it
is, and the rides are the least of it. It's the transportation, and in our case, it's the wall that we build is so high. I think we have 14 or 18 rest umbrellas. We got 4 rest tents. We got 18 light towers. We got 4 gates. So it's all those extra things that we do that takes so long. It's a guy named Jim Roller. I don't know if you knew him or not, but he was a guy on the Royal American, had games. He ended up buying the Hale Show of Tomorrow, and then Jerry Murphy talked him into buying Al Kuntz's Century 21 show, and it just didn't work for him. He was a wonderful guy, but it didn't work for him, and that's who I took over Century 21 Southern Route from. And he stayed with me the first year, and so did Al Kuntz, which is all great stories. Al Kuntz, what a great old showman that he was. I don't know what point I was trying to make.
When you took over the Wade shows, I mean, you had a game background.
I did.
You were a game guy.
Yeah.
So, it's always interesting to me. It's scary moving into the ride section of things. It's like you don't know everything about it. Did it give you some hesitancy to try and do that? I know you had a partner who was supposed to be the ride guy, but when that washes away, what do you think, or do you have to learn?
First of all, I had no fear. I had no fear. Sometimes I'm a little less aggressive nowadays than I used to be, and one of my kids, I won't say which one, kind of checks me up and said, "Dad, what happened to you? You wouldn't. Why are you taking that?" Well, time has a way of seeing everybody else's side too. But I was really aggressive. Probably ignorance is bliss, because I didn't really know what I was in for. I just wasn't afraid. And you're right. Jerry Vincent was the first ride guy that I met that had larceny and had what I thought schemability or business sense in the overall picture of the show. Most ride guys that I knew before that was their expertise, was rides. But Jerry was good all the way around. But it was pretty evident. Heck, we were 2 weeks into our partnerships, and our wives quit speaking.
Oh, no.
And so on the first year we were on the same unit, Jerry and I, and Sherman Schmidt was on the second unit, and then the third unit we called it the urban unit, and a guy named Rick Kirkland was running it. But anyway, then that second year, Sherman went on to have his own shows that was very successful, and Jerry took over Sherman's unit, and I stayed with the unit that I was most familiar with. But at the end of the second year, it was obvious that we had to split up, and he really didn't care about it. And so I bought him out, and then I went from there. But what I did do is I mentioned Art Danton earlier. I made Art my partner on some kiddie rides, and all the key people over there, I gave them some kind of vested interest for the sole purpose is I needed somebody to tell me the truth, because I wouldn't know it if I seen it, with rides. So, and they did do that. And we had a lot of partnerships, the first 10, 15 years. We did away with the partnerships, not because of the money, but because the amount of work that it took to keep track of all them. And so we just compensated in other ways, but it was never about we didn't want our partners to make more money. It was about, it was so doggone hard. It took us so long afterwards to come to a year-end settlement. But we had a lot of those. Most of them worked. There were some of them that didn't work. You know,
But at least it kept good ride guys around you where you,
yeah,
I don't want to say weakness, but where you had a vulnerability, you made sure you had the right guys in place.
I was so successful with those things that I thought it was just a slam dunk. And then I had one partnership, and I won't mention this guy's name because it doesn't show any good purpose in doing that. But I had one, and about a month after we were partners, I knew it was going to be one and done. It was going to be the last year. So we got through that year with that ride, and then I settled up with him, and we weren't partners anymore. But I don't like the partnerships, not because I don't want other people to get the money. It's just an extra layer of things that you got to take care of and keep track of. And in today's world, I'd rather pay a guy than have to figure out all kinds of propositions for them to make the kind of money that they need to make.
Plus, I guess their loyalties become divided a little bit. They pay attention to one thing instead of the whole show.
Yeah,
I've heard you.
Unfortunately, as you get bigger, the drama gets bigger too. And I would absolutely not be telling the truth if I said that there was no drama on the Wade shows, because there is, and I hate that. You know, that's I just really wish we could snap our fingers and do away with all drama and jealousy, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's another one of those things that you got to put it all in perspective and you got to manage it.
Well, here's a kind of I'm curious myself. I've been curious. I'd love to hear your perspective. It's kind of a curveball, though. It's probably something you haven't answered before. But you said that, sports heroes and carnival guys were your heroes. So who are your top 3 or 5 carnival guys in your perspective, and why? What did you look up to them about? Like, if you had to rank them, who would they be, and what, really did you see in them that you wanted to admire?
Well, as you mentioned earlier, my family was in the game business, so it was really weird because I was the first guy in my family to own a house trailer and live in the lot. My dad and mom always stayed in motels, Holiday Inns, but there was such a marked difference in a ride guy, a game guy, a food guy, a back end guy. They were all separated, and they all thought they were the best, and so no difference in the concession business. So when I got my job as concession manager with Rod, that was in 1971. Concession manager back in those days, there was all different kind of games, and a lot of those games wouldn't operate in today's world, nor should they operate. And it was the concession manager's job to make sure those games operated. So what I would do, answering your question, is I would ask, who was the greatest concession manager? And then one person would say Whitey Wise. Well, why was he the greatest? And they'd tell me his attributes. And then it was Harry Schreiber, and then it was Claude Sechrist. So it was all these concession managers were the first guys that I looked up to, and while I didn't really know them any personally, everybody, Whitey Wise, Royal America, and he was the king of concession managers. So, I think we looked up to him. What I tried to do is hear why all those guys were good and make sure I included that in my game. And I had an advantage that a lot of people in the carnival business didn't have, and that was I had a great deal of friends outside of the carnival business. And because of going to college and all, it was quite common for people to say to me, well, you don't look or act like a carnival guy. And of course, my answer would be, well, what's one of them guys look like? What do they act like? But so I had an advantage when I was dealing with fairs or committees or police departments or whatever, that I could communicate in a way that didn't make them uncomfortable or think they were dealing with one of them carnival guys that was going to rape, rob, and plunder. So to answer your question, I don't think I had I don't think I had a personal hero, but I had people like the Royal American shows, Century
Okay.
21. You know, I thought the world of the Vivodas. You know, they were based. You know, we lived in Miami, and going to the club on Monday night was something that all Carnival men did, and and I was no different. So they were very active in the Miami Showman's Club, particularly Johnny.
Johnny.
I did hear the part when Phil was on with you the other day that he talked about that probably if there was one boss, maybe Johnny was that boss, and maybe Johnny was the guy that kept kicking the can forward. He had, had a good personality, and he had the ability to book spots. Which that was something that I always wanted to do. Is I was so flattered, when I started to gain a reputation as a good booking agent because in my days, J.C. McCarthy, there was all these guys that were known for being powerhouse booking agents, and so I wanted to be a guy that was known as a good concession manager or a great concession manager. I wanted to be the very best, and then I wanted to be a guy that emulated the big shows, and I think I did that in a common sense of way because my knowledge of what was right and wrong uh, grew at the same pace as my income. So I didn't know about $250 automotive paint and hardener and clear coat and all those kind of things. I knew about a brush and Sherwood Williams going over top of a dirty trailer, and so as I could afford to do better, I also realized that I needed to do better.
Interesting. So you're gonna avoid the question of the best carnival owner guys a little bit
Yeah, I am because I don't think I don't.
because you can say Frank Zaitchik.
I'd have to make up one. I'd have to make up one. And I wouldn't say I was the best carnival guy in the world. I think I made my mark, or I always wanted to make a mark, and whether I would admit it to myself or not, I want people I don't need to be made over. I don't want to be the center of attention in a room or anything like that. But I do well when you talk about carnival guys that have accomplished a lot and actually came from the business. I'd be very flattered and humbled if people thought of me that way. And if they don't, I guess it's not going to make any difference at the end anyway. So, it's what you're really. I wish I could share whatever knowledge I have with up and coming young people to help them avoid the pitfalls that I made, give them a chance to not make that error and go right to success. But that's trial and error with everybody, and it just depends on what everybody's definition was. I did what I wanted to do. I wanted to be big. I wanted to conquer the world. I wanted to be a state fair player. But that's only a measure of success if that's what you want. I have friends and some younger friends that don't want that or don't need that, and I advise them against trying to get there because the more you do that, the more it's going to consume your life, and you're not going to have time to do your show for 3 or 4 days and go back home, and then come back on the weekends. I've never been that guy. I've always right now I'm at Buck Days in Corpus Christi. Do I really have to be here? Probably not, or I could probably just be here for a day or two and then go home. But I don't ever want to break that what I think is expected of myself. So I always want to live up to what I set for myself as what I'm supposed to do. And I try to do that. I think the biggest problem I have anymore, Ron, is I have so many friends, allies, and team members that have been there and done that. It's hard to get everybody back up for the next great adventure. And there's always a next greater adventure. I've got some things. If our team can pull it together, we're not done yet. I've got other things that we're going to accomplish, or we hope to accomplish, or that'll be our goals. And I don't think that the carnival that we're we are today will be the carnival we are this time next year, or the
Now you're always pushing forward, always continuous improvement. I think I heard you say one time, but and it goes hand in hand with Wade Show's known for amenities and the customer presentation and all those sort of things. When did that kind of get on your radar, and how important has that become to you?
It's a great question, Ron, and it is really important too. And I've got a vivid memory of how that started and all. But
Oh, really?
let's go way back, to where there was, as a game guy, there was canvas. Canvas was khaki color or green, and then you had colors that came out. In our case, my mom and dad's colors were yellow and green, and my mom used to say the green's for money, the yellow's for sun, and we kept those colors with the weight shows. And so everybody had to have yellow and green. Our uniforms were yellow and green. And then when 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 we made the deal with Rod for Oklahoma City, that was going to be our new adventure. And I had heard of people with rest umbrellas in California, but not who you would think, not RCS. The first person that I heard talk about Midway amenities and things was Lloyd Hildegast, and he got the LA County Fair in 1981. And one of the things he did is he put grass down all around his 4-breast merry-go-round, and he started putting rest areas there. And I remembered that. And so when I got Oklahoma City, I implemented rest umbrellas. I also decided it was time to change our colors from yellow to green. And I tried to make it a democratic thing where I got everybody's advice. And at the end of the day, I voted one more than anybody else did. They wanted to go light blue and dark blue. Actually, what colors that my buddy Corky Powers and Powers of American Midway is, that's where our team wanted to go. And I didn't want to go there. I wanted that pink Wade Show blue and white. And so I agreed to the light blue and the dark blue. And then I reversed myself before they ever left the meeting and said, no, we're going to go with these colors. So 1992, we switched to pink, turquoise, and white. There's other people that have those colors. And what I always says, I don't know if I was first or not. If they did it before 1992, then they were first. If they did it after 92, then I was first. So we made a big move on Oklahoma City. We did some things that I couldn't afford in the past, like putting on all the fence, we put the Wade Show logo. We bought umbrellas, but back then we thought you had to put them in the ground. So all of our umbrellas, we cut out like a 4x4 or 2x2 section of concrete, put them in there, concreted them up, and just left the sleeve in there. And so for several years, we thought that the only way you could put up those umbrellas, you had to mount them in the ground and leave the sleeve. So when we started building stands, that was a great improvement. So Oklahoma City was our first big adventure with Midway amenities, and we grew off of that, Ron. And what I say to a lot of people is, particularly, anybody can put that down as part of their proposal. And anybody can say they're going to do it, and they can have great intentions, but unless you do those kind of things on a regular basis, it's very challenging to come. If you don't have a really stringent uniform policy, and then you get to a big spot and all of a sudden you want one, you're not going to accomplish it the same way as if it's a foundation and you do that all the time anyway. So those kind of things take years of practice and years of redundancy. I can't remember the last time that somebody was working in a food or game or on a ride and didn't have a uniform on. Now, they may not have been 100% right, but I can't. And back in the old days, you had to do that. When I was early on, and some people might disagree with that, but for me, I was early on with pants. And we had the shirts, and then it was a couple of years later I said, we're just not hitting the mark. We need pants, and we went to black shorts or black pants. And to get that done, at first it was buy one get two free. So for the first, I don't know, half a season that we did that, we were practically giving them away, but we don't give them away anymore.
Yeah, that precision. So that just became a really, really important thing for you and for the show to have those amenities. And
here's an interesting thing. In 2005, we had, and you were a big part of that, Ron, and me and you and our numbers and whatnot when we got the North Carolina State Fair.
Mm-hmm.
So, the heck was I going to say about that? I lost my train of thought.
With amenities.
Yes. Okay. So we had that reputation. We go to North Carolina. They beat us every place. They beat us like a drum. It was very difficult for us to get open. We got open with our contractual obligations, but they started such a thing. It was every day 6 rides not open or 3 rides. We had the most rides that were ever there. I think we had like 118, 120 rides or so, but we had difficulty getting open, and as a difficulty to that, a lot of people said, "See, they're all smoke and mirrors," meaning that we cover up our multitude of sins, but we still got them. And I don't know if that was true or not, but that was just another watershed moment for me, because when that happened to us in 2005, rather than turn tail and run and not want to go back, I wanted more than anything to go back and to prove them wrong. And the North Carolina Ride Inspection Program has been a really good thing for us, because it put us way ahead of the curve in corrosion and some of the things that other states weren't inspecting because they didn't think they were significant. North Carolina's did since 2005. I know you were there. You had all that, and you made the argument that if your car's on the blink, should you not drive the car, or you got a little dent in the door?
I think I said if your radio knob is not working, should your car not be able to be driven, because things like fence and stuff were.
And I think they wanted to teach us a lesson back then. I really do. They came to the Florida State Fair, a group of them, including Clyde Wagner and Jonathan Brooks and some of their top inspectors at that time. And so they're in my office, and they're all stone-faced, and I'm going like, "Hey guys, loosen up. If you don't like this, then I'm in big trouble, because this is the best of what I got here at the Florida State Fair." and none of them thought it was funny. And then I also made the mistake of I said something like, "Hey, I know some of the carnivals that come to your state, and if they could pass inspection, I could pass inspection." Well, so that going in the night before we opened, I think in the press conference, we had 33 rides that were stickered out of that 118. And Clyde Wagner comes to me and he said, "Frank, it's not as bad as it seems. You're going to get a lot of stuff stickered in the morning." I looked at him and I said, "Easy for you to say. I felt like I'd been beat with everything but a ball bat." But we did, and it put us ahead of the curve. But my point with amenities is, we possibly our rides caught up after 2005 or took that next step.
That was a good learning experience for sure for you.
We weren't a good carnival, or that we weren't a safe carnival, but that 2005 experience at the North Carolina State Fair helped us commit to a higher level of safety and inspections than we ever had before.
And that's what you're all about. Unfortunately, we're right at the hour mark here.
And I didn't even tell you any of the good stories.
Part 1 of 8 of the Frank Zaitshik interview. We'll be having weekly podcasts from Frank. But Frank, I appreciate you. I do want to get you back and tell some more stories. But thanks so much for being here, and it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care, guys. Bye bye.